Evgeny Kissin.
Evgeny Kissin. Evgeny Kissin. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another episode of What's in a Performance. Today we are taking a look at Evgeny Kissin's performance of Liszt's Liebestraum. Liebestraum? I literally can't pronounce any of these names. But regardless, it is a fantastic performance by a fantastic pianist. Be sure to stick around to the end, where I will be attempting to sight read Liebestraum 3? Liebestraum? Be sure to stick around to the end, where I'll be attempting to sight read parts of this piece. And with all that being said, let's get right to the video. I talked before, I think, a little bit on how the body language of the performer influences how we hear or are captivated by the music, right? Which is why I think live performances are so incredible, and it almost feels completely different from listening to just, a recording where you only get audio. The way Kissin prepares, right? I've talked about preparing before the first note as well. Hearing the first note in your head before you start also, it's very clear that he hears this E flat, right, into this C. He's already played it in his head before he starts, right? But the effect of him leaning forward, getting ready, the breathing, the tension, everything, right, just kind of pulls us into that world with him right before he starts. One thing to note, right, even with the phrasing, we hear how the C comes up a lot. In fact, the only note in the melody for several measures. And the reason why it doesn't become boring or dry is, again, we're playing with direction. Where is this C going? It's going to the D flat, right? And because it's going to the D flat, all the C's in that line all kind of crescendo forward a little bit, push a tiny bit forward in the tempo until we get to that D flat. And then that's when we get the sigh and a little bit of release. And this is, again, talking about breathing, the sigh. Of course, the broken chords are played very lightly, right? And they kind of swell a little bit too, to give it a little bit of texture, a little bit of the undulating feel. The end of a sentence, right? And then the next one. Bigger question mark because of the minor chord. And that F is placed so delicate. Look how close his fingers are sticking to the keys, right? They're coming up only very slightly, and the notes that are part of the melody, those are the ones where he lifts a little bit more. Pushing the tempo, right? Because it's getting, hitting that forte, mezzo forte. And as he comes back down, then he releases the tension, right, in the tempo as well. And here, slight build. So, okay, I think we have to talk real quick about something, right? For a lot of people, for a lot of beginners, intermediate, even intermediate advanced players, even myself, we have a tendency to play faster when things get louder and to slow down when it gets quieter. But that's not because we're doing it intentionally or musically, because we tend to think louder means more energy means faster. But what Kissin is doing here, he's not necessarily doing that. He's playing with a direction, right? And that's why the tempo pushes forward with the dynamic increasing. So it doesn't sound like him rushing, it sounds like him building towards something else. And that's the crucial difference. When we're just rushing and playing faster because we're at a forte, then things start falling out of position. You start hearing things that aren't phrased properly, and you as the listener not only feel like the playing is off, but you feel like you're being hurried along. But with Kissin, what he's doing here, you don't feel like you're being hurried along, you feel like you're being drawn up in the tension of what he's doing. And of course, that's because he's, practiced. He hears it in his head. The push forward is guided by how he's playing the melody. And so all these things have to come together in order to make that tempo manipulation work. And these builds, again, from the melody. It starts from the melody first. Sweet hope. Okay, what I'm listening for here, obviously the melody. The melody is played and phrased incredibly well. It's clear that the way that he's playing the melody is by placing the notes very precisely. And we've talked about placing notes before in these videos, and the way that we do it is by, again, lifting the finger and then rotating the wrist slightly and dropping weight into that key. And this gives it that articulation, that precision, that clarity that allows it to ring. Consider a performance like this. He's playing live in a concert hall. Each note has to make its way to the back of the hall. And that's actually one of the more interesting things that you have to do as a pianist. You have to play for the room that you're in. So times when I've auditioned or like competed in smaller rooms, you can't afford to be as loud because you will overwhelm the room, even with like, you know, a 6 foot, 7 foot grand piano. But with like a 9 foot grand in a recital hall that's massive and you get all this reverb, you have to manage the pedal differently, slightly differently, and you have to play to the back of the room and each note has to ring. So if you're sitting in the back of the auditorium, you're sitting in the back of the recital hall, what is the most important thing for you to hear? You need to hear the melody ringing over everything else. It is precisely that idea, that concept, which is why we place these notes with such precision, with such articulation, with such clarity, and with such love and care. Everything else, right? Listen to what everything else is doing, too. Those need to make it to the back of the room, but it's a little bit less imperative, because they kind of form the undulation below the melody. Hear how the broken chords are like swelling and building and like coming back down, right? With almost each iteration. So hear how they're pushing along the tempo, right? In conjunction with the melody. And you also hear how the bass note just rings throughout the entire measure. Sure, it's a layer below, but then he's also affording to be a little bit more heavy on the spots where he can't, just so that it rings a little bit longer, so that we can hear through everything else. Incredible. Feel that build right with the melody? It's like he built up to that tempo, right? And this is important to note. You build up to the tempo and then you have to remember what it is. You can't just keep going. It can't just be nebulous the entire time. We have to find that pulse again, even through the Celerando. Da, 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 da. Right, hear that phrasing, da, 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 dum. You can pull at the top of a melody. You can always, you know, drop the dynamic. Always think about how you can subvert what the listener is going for, but also mind where the musical question marks are. I love thinking about musical question marks, even for just a listener. If you have no idea about anything about music theory, there are certain times at the end of certain phrases you just feel like it's unresolved, right? There needs to be something that comes next. And certain notes at the beginning of phrases too just seem to date more notes that follow it. Just hear the phrases. Like right here, question mark, right? That's formed by the chords in the left hand, right? And there's the resolution. And that's their answer, right? We feel the release of tension a little bit. And that's why drop in dynamic. And again, another cadenza-like moment where the composer allows us to have a little bit of fun and flex a little of our virtuosity. But you see some of the da-da-da-da-da, because it's alternating, you see a tiny bit of wrist motion to help with that clarity and the speed of this run, right? And you also see the forearm moving, right? Forearm moving along with this and the body leading with the run. It's super important. Some people, beginners in general, tend to play a little bit too stiff, and then you just get this sort of movement. And your hand moves out of place, it gets a little bit wonky, it gets a little bit difficult to maintain the speed. And so the body moving, leading the arm, right, super important. Tempo is dropped, right? It's very, almost like airy now, a bit more whimsical. Listen to the color changes, right? That come from him digging a little bit deeper in with the fingers, with a little bit more weight on certain notes in the melody. And listen to how the broken chords in the middle voice are still moving up and down and like pushing the tempo along slightly and also pulling it slightly. That middle voice, sometimes some people treat it as filler, right? It's just filler chords, but it's not. It has a vital role in that it's filling the space, but it also controls the space in between the melodic notes and the bass notes. That lift and hold the pedal a little bit. Question marks, right? Question marks. Incredible. Simply incredible. Alright, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Be sure to check out my Discord if you would like to talk to me about music or anything else related. And yeah, watch one of these other videos and support me on Patreon and stuff like that. And until next time, everybody, peace.